So what we're going to be talking about today is why survey in the first place. And going into that into some sort of depth. Also, this is science. It's not seance. It's important to talk about how to do questions. That's in fact the bulk of a survey is questions. And learning about the past, the future, what's going on now, and then using this in marketing. Using these results in marketing is very important, and how it fits in with survey marketing. I've done a lot of surveys over the years. I do quite a few now, and I'm going to be mixing that experience in and giving you an idea of what I've seen in surveys, what works, what maybe doesn't work so well, etc. So let's drive on. What you're going to do with surveys, what they help you do is to understand what's true, right? In every company, there are people that talk about knowing the market, knowing the mind of the customers, and they probably do. But a lot of that knowledge is anecdotal. It's not really scientific. And in companies, there's people that, and there's schools of thought that have pet theories about why customers buy, why they don't buy, etc. A survey is a way to prove that, right? Replacing, as we say here, conjecture with truth. You can also identify your weaknesses, your strengths, or competitors' strengths or weaknesses, which is very important, and finding new opportunities, new angles, new things that you didn't know about your customers. Also, figuring out what customers' perceptions are of you, your market, your product niche, whatever. And it also gives you some really good content to use to fill in the times when you don't have, for instance, a new product launch or a new announcement or something like that. So another thing about surveys is that there is a huge financial payback for them. Minimal investment too. It doesn't cost all that much. And in my mind, there's nothing better than a survey for gaining market intelligence, getting to know your customers and your prospects, which is maybe more important. Understanding where you should invest in product development, new product angles, new product lines, things like that, and then building outbound marketing material. And we're not talking about sort of the survey monkey kind of survey here. Those are fine for some things. Those online surveys are great for short sort of general surveys, but better tools do a better job of building surveys and allow you to manipulate data in ways that a lot of those online tools just won't let you do. There's many more question types. There's more flexibility in how you deploy the questions. We're going to be talking about that a little bit more. So as I say here, surveys are a science, not a seance, and small numbers of respondents can predict what an entire market has to say. And just a couple of simple examples here that, for instance, there's close to 24,000 US businesses in the country with more than 1,000 employees. And only surveying 2,176 of them would yield results with a 2% margin of error. In other words, 2% chance that you're wrong, and a 95% confidence interval, which means you've got a 95% certainty that you're only 2% wrong, or that your margin of error is only 2%. Another example is, let's assume that there's 2,500 mid to large size data centers. And if we got folks from 10% of them, 250 to respond, you'd have a 5.88 margin of error with a 95% confidence level that your error is only 5.88%. That's pretty accurate. That's good enough for what we're trying to do and for the vast majority of marketing tasks. So questions. Questions are very important. In fact, they're key. And the right question will get you the right information. Closed-ended questions, I think, are best. Open-ended questions where you have, you're asking, so hey, where do you think the server market is going? And then you have this big block of text space that they can answer. They won't do that. You might get a sentence or two, but you're certainly not going to get the kind of detail that you could ask, that you could elicit with more close-ended questions. Open-ended big questions are also a downer for the user. No one wants to go in and have to write a research report to answer your questions. What they will do is they'll go in and do some clicks, right? So that same question, where's the server market going, can be broken down into a number of closed-ended questions to get a really detailed account of exactly where that customer thinks the server market's going, whether it's growing, whether they see it shrinking, what types of servers they see as more prevalent, etc. I really like what I call what everybody calls the dual scale questions, where you're giving your respondees a phrase that, for instance, our server, why am I not thinking of one? Okay, here's one. Our server requirements are growing by more than 10% a year. And you give them the ability to strongly agree, strongly disagree, agree, disagree, and not sure, right? Then you can ask them, our server requirements are actually shrinking, and the same scale. And the way they answer those two questions is a great way to be able to look at the response and say, is this one on the level? Because they can give a contradictory answer to that question. The other thing is that demographics are often overlooked, but they're very important, because you can cut your survey responses by a particular demographic class. For instance, staying with the server example, that you can see how the users with more than 1,000 servers, for instance, regard what's happening in the server market versus those that have maybe 100 servers. And there'll be differences there, absolutely. So one of the things that you can do with surveys is explain the past. How did we get to where we are? How have customer needs changed over the past years? And you know, one of the things that's interesting to me on this is that I started doing surveys, oh boy, I don't want to date myself, but probably nearly 20 years ago. And I was surveying, as you can tell from my example, servers. And I was doing Unix surveys, and it was kind of figuring out how customers were viewing Unix servers from the various vendors, HP, IBM, Sun, etc. And I decided, well, what about x86 servers? Is there any difference? Do customers see differences in that? Because if you ask a lot of actually even server vendors back in that day, they say, well, these are commodity boxes. There's not a lot of difference between them all. They use x86 processors. They kind of get topped out at the same capabilities. So yeah, we don't really think customers care that much. It's more of a cost thing. So I went in with my same approach from a Unix survey to see if customers truly did see any difference between x86 servers. And damn it, they really, really did. And thinking back on it, it shouldn't have surprised me, because you look at, for instance, automobiles, right? Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, Infiniti, Ford, Chevy, all of those, they're vastly different. The experience you get in a high-end Mercedes is vastly different than what you get in a rental car Ford Focus, right? And that makes a difference to customers. Although you look at cars, they all have four wheels, they all operate exactly the same. The key or the button you press to start them is in the same place. So really there shouldn't be any difference, right? It should be just cost. It's not. It's not. Some of the things that you can get from doing a survey, going back to this explain the past concept, is why are your products successful? What are the attributes that your most loyal customers value? And that's what I found exactly in those x86 surveys. And again, you can get this stuff with just a few well-crafted questions. So your questions about today: what are customers what's their most pressing need, right? What is it that they use your product for? What does it relieve? Does it make their workflow go faster? Does it save them money? Does it make their workflow more reliable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Diving in though, you want to find out how they perceive your competitors and your competitors versus you, right? You want to find out, do they think that your competitors offer better value for the money? Do they think your competitors do a better job on service? Have them rank you all numerically based on a bunch of different criteria. And what are the rankings of customer needs in your marketplace? That's a big deal. So what we're talking about there is things like, are your customers looking to cut their costs? Are they looking to increase productivity? Are they looking to be more reliable? Are they looking to add capabilities that they didn't have before? And which of those is more important? One of the questions that I really like, and I started doing this in my surveys, is asking questions to find out what would make customers change suppliers. First of all, you have to figure out in previous questions who their main suppliers are and who their secondary suppliers are. And then you ask them, what is it that would make you change from X to someone else? Would it be a reduction in cost? Would it be better pre-sales? Would it be better post-sales? Would it be different product attributes? Things like that. And along those lines, you can also use this and some other questions to check on the progress of competitors that maybe aren't strong yet, but are sort of the flashy newcomers, that type of thing, startups that maybe not everybody has heard of yet. I also like to find out what would negate the need for a particular product. Is there anything? Ask your customers and find out. You're also learning along the way who's gaining strength, who's losing strength, etc. But you need to do periodic surveys in order to keep tracking those trends. And again, right questions give you the answers that will really help you in your journey of discovery of your market and your customer's mindset. So survey marketing, we've mostly been talking about surveys so far for internal purposes, internal product marketing, internal use for product designers, things like that. But this can all be used externally as well. You could use these survey results to prove markets, prove that they exist, where some folks might not think they do, market size, your competitive claims, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing to keep in at the top of your mind is that a survey is not really credible if you're doing it for yourself in the outside market. It's very credible for your inside people, but in terms of getting press attention, in getting customer engagement, to get analysts aware of things, stuff like that, you really want to have a third party do the survey. They don't have an axe to grind. They're not perceived as being biased one way or another. And this kind of output is really important for filling marketing gaps between product launches, announcements, things like that. You can, in fact, put entire campaigns around the right survey results. So getting started with surveys, here's a few ideas that we came up with. Has COVID-19 changed customer behavior? That's probably true. How big is our market? That is a very good one. And asking customers, what products do they buy of yours and how much do they typically spend, will give you your market size. Are you the leader? That's very important. What features are most important to our customers in our product? You might be surprised by this. I've had surveys that I've done with clients where they thought that their strength was, you know, like feature A, B, and C. And these were sort of bolted on features to a standard server product that were nice. And they made a lot of nice slides about it. But what we found in surveys, customers didn't care. Customers were buying them because of other things that were more important to them. In this particular case, reliability, pre-sale service, and post-sale support. It wasn't the fancy stuff. And that's the last bullet. Are there features of our product that customers don't care about? There are. And you won't know until you ask them. So don't do this alone. Look at this guy. Horrible suit. He's fishing with a stick, probably using his shoelaces for line. He's not happy. He's not doing well. This is what it's like when you go out and try and do a survey yourself. Well, it's not exactly like this. You probably won't end up starving and fishing off of a dock, but still, it's a great picture. I loved it. The thing about using a third party for a survey is that that third party doesn't have any preconceived assumptions about the market. Your folks will, your folks do. Other thing about a third party is they're not in this to try and appeal to a particular faction or school of thought in your organization. Again, they don't care. And the right third party is going to give you the data straight. They're not going to try and dress it up. They're not going to try and tell you what you want to hear, because that doesn't do anybody any good. And I found that as I've done surveys, my experience and objectivity, but particularly the experience in being able to put together scenarios and customer types out of the surveys really helps out. It really helps explain the data. And, you know, third parties like myself and OrionX, we always have more ideas about how to tease out more data from a survey than meets the eye. It's doing those combinations of questions, sorting by different demographics, things like that, and uncovering these little nuggets that can do an awful lot to give you a better market presence and a bigger market share. So human marketing, this is something that we've been talking about for a few months now. We have other webinars out there that you might want to check out. We believe that with what's happened with COVID-19, that every marketing organization needs to change to fit these new market realities. And there's a new audience out there that's mostly trapped at home that does have time to engage with things like surveys. There's new content that you can generate. Again, my idea is coming from surveys, but there's new aspects. You need to humanize your company, and you need to really hit on those products and the product attributes that customers highly value, and find areas to improve. With digital marketing and where we are now, you can punch above your weight. Everybody is somewhat equal, and we're all on an equal playing field when it comes to getting digital attention. And lastly, I want to leave you with on this slide is that competitive position is won by knowledge, by knowing your customers, knowing yourself, and knowing your competitors better than the other guy. That's really important. So we're going to take some questions now. That's actually the lineup of OrionX. And our email addresses are firstlast.last@orionx.net. And we are out here right now. We've got a bank of people monitoring their emails for anything coming in from any of you. Some of the things that we do is simplifying 5G, IoT, HPC, AI. I'm deeply involved in that. Blockchain and crypto and quantum computing. We are also running with this idea of human marketing. How to do budgeting for it, planning, execution, and justification for it. We do a lot with building communities. Customer-focused content creation. I do a lot of videos, podcasts, stuff like that. We also do competitive intelligence, helping you put together your own competitive intelligence organization. And we just had a webcast on that, or webinar, and there's going to be a couple of more. And some educational webinars like this one. Hey, this is an educational webinar, isn't it? You're witnessing that right now. And podcasts hosted by our research analysts, of which I am one. So let's stop now and see if there are any questions queued up. And we do have some. Let me pull that over to my screen. First question. We'd like to survey our customers, but management thinks a tool like SurveyMonkey is fine. How can we justify a more comprehensive survey? My answer to that is to take a look at what you get off of SurveyMonkey and try and do the kind of data manipulation that you'd do if you just had it in a spreadsheet and applied some analytics to it. The other thing is that you don't quite have the flexibility with questions and things that you have with a comprehensive survey. It's one of these things that, you know, if you're interested, give me a call or send me an email. We could talk offline about it because there's a lot of different ways to talk about this. Okay, attendee, if we send a survey to 1,000 people, what response rate should we aim for? 100%. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. If you send a survey out to 1,000 people, I'm assuming that they're qualified in some degree, that they're probably from your customer lists, or they might be from at least trade show lists, things like that. I would be pretty happy on that kind of list if I had 5 or 6%. That's kind of the way it is. You know how many survey requests you get. It would make a difference if that survey is coming from your company, but if it's coming from your company, then the results aren't all that credible in the open market. What I do to get responses, and this is the problem that everybody has, is getting enough qualified responses for a survey, is I will give out like an Amazon.com gift certificate to every valid response that I get. And the size of that gift certificate, that gift card, which you deliver through email, so it's very easy, but the size of that reward will vary with how difficult it is to get at the kind of person I'm trying to get to. If I'm trying to get at highly specialized folks, then that reward has to be higher in order to get them to take the time. Next question, how do you find appropriate survey participants? Well, that's not easy either. I know that for me, I rely on lists of people that I've had do surveys before, that I know actually work in data centers, that know their way around data centers. You can get lists from trade shows. That's a good way to go. You typically have to buy your first list or build it out of what you have. There are ways of doing that. It's something we can talk about offline as well. There are so many surveys. Here's another question. There are so many surveys now. How do we manage survey burnout or overkill? The key to that, I believe, and I seldom have problems getting responses to my surveys because I feel like I sort of know some of these people now, in that they know that I'm going to give them the reward. They know I'm not going to spam them, that sort of thing. So they're willing to take the time. But it's a good question. You need to not survey every 2 minutes. You need to probably, I would go 2 to 4 times a year. I would have my survey written very friendly and accessible and open, so it doesn't look like they're being surveyed by a machine. And actually, this dovetails well with this last question here, that if you're tracking trends and changes in customers, how often would you survey? Once a year, every 6 months, 4 times a year? What's too much and what's too little? It's going to, you know, I hate this question, this answer I'm going to give. It depends. And what it depends on is how quickly is your market changing? How quickly is your company changing? I might advise doing a survey every 4 months, every 4 months or so, 3 times a year. If your company is changing a lot, and say you're surveying customers about how they perceive your service, your after sales service, for instance. If I'm looking at broad changes in a market, I don't think you need to go more than every 6 months. And if you do have like an every 6 month cadence, change less than 20% of the questions every iteration of the survey, because you want to be sure and capture the trends. And you can't do that if you're changing every question up. And you're going to be thinking, oh, we just asked that question last time. Ask it again. See how it changes. Any more questions out there? Comments, creates. Oh, here's another question. Does offering a copy of the survey results, is that an incentive? You know, I've offered survey results to all of my survey participants with every survey I've done. And this is over, you know, again, close to a couple of decades. I've only had one or two ever ping me to get those results. I don't think that that's a valid incentive. I don't think in many cases it would get someone to take that time to do the survey. Any other questions, comments, complaints? We're closing down. Well, I really appreciate all of you taking the time to listen and watch this webinar. I hope it's been good. Please reach out if you have any questions, even if you just want to talk this over. It's something that I like to talk about, so you can drop me an email, or any of us at OrionX. As you can tell, I like to talk a lot, so be prepared for that. But again, thank you for your time and your interest, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.